Okay, good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Before I do, I'd just like to read a statement. Port Colborne, these are unprecedented times, but it's times like these that show the resiliency, strength, and unity of our community. Myself, along with council and staff, are urging you to follow recommendations outlined by Niagara Regional Public Health, including frequent hand washing, practicing of social and physical distancing, and self-isolation if required, to help flatten the curve and limit the spread of the COVID-19 virus in our community. We are continuing to monitor this pandemic and are providing updates as they become available. For city updates, visit our website at www.portcolborne.ca or call 905-835-2900 to speak with a customer service representative. I'd also like to thank our frontline first responders, from social workers, nurses, doctors, fire, police, and ambulance for the banner job they're doing, not only across Niagara, but across Ontario and Canada. As was said by our Premier today, and also our Prime Minister, stay home, don't gather in groups. We can't stress enough as politicians of the videos we've seen over the weekend of people gathering, and even today in Port Colborne at one of our parks, a large gathering of I believe it was a soccer team. We can't have this. So please follow the practices of public health and let's all stay safe. Thank you. Introduction of addendum items, Madam Clerk.
The proposed bylaw 67-17-20 will be amended to include 7.4-E shall count towards quorum when permitted through section 238 of the Municipal Act. This just allows quorum to be permitted through electronic participation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Confirmation of the agenda. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Bodnar, Councillor Danch. Questions? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Any disclosures of interest with all the business? I have 3 minutes. The regular meeting of Committee of the Whole 05-20 held on March 9th, 2020. Special meeting of Council 07-20 held on March 9th, 2020. Regular meeting of Council 08-20 held on March 9th, 2020. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Bruno. Any questions on any of those minutes? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Items determining separate discussion. Councillors. Councillor Bruno.
There won't be questions, just a quick statement on 4 and 5.
Peter? What do you want to be brought forward? Anything?
Six is the budget.
5 and 6 for the water budget and the
Okay. Councillor Wells, can you bring item 6 forward? Is that fine?
Yep.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Mark.
Number 3, please.
A mover and a seconder of those items not requiring separate discussion. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Wells, questions? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 3, Councillor Bagu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Corporate Services Department Report 2020-46, subject 2020, financing for Nickel Area Storm Sewer Capital Project, Region of Niagara Infrastructure Ontario Loan Program.
Seconder for that, Councillor Bruno, Councillor Bagu.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Basically, for reasons of transparency for residents, perhaps the CAO can explain why we're asking for a $5 million debenture application.
Thank you. Scott?
Sure. Through worship to Councillor Bagu, this is in reference to a construction project that was approved in 2017. The lowest bidder was selected for about $8.3 million. The project began with the successful bidder. There was grant money to help offset that. And during the course of executing the project, there were unforeseen conditions in the soil. There was contaminated soil, the historic contamination that was the subject of the CBRA in the past. There was also some hydrocarbons found in the work site. What the end result was is that there was overruns on the construction. There was a lot of material that had to be taken away and treated at a special landfill for contaminated material. The original design had that material being backfilled into the excavation to replace itself. Because it had to be treated specially and taken away, that material then had to be brought in, whether in the form of gravel and aggregate or in clean fill, and that added to the cost increase as well. The nature of the project was such that it was too late to stop and sort of cancel the project. So staff proceeded to, with some updates to council over the years, proceeded to complete the project. So where we sit today is that staff is proposing that the extra funding of $5.179 million is the subject of a debenture over 30 years that will bring the project back to fully funded status.
Counselor?
Thank you very much, Mr. CAO and Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 4, Counselor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Engineering and Operations Department, Engineering Division, Report 2020-43, subject Downtown CIP Funding Strategy.
Seconder for this? Counselor Danch. Counselor Bruno.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in discussions on this, my concern is that although it may always be the case that this project may have to be phased, my concern is that what we're really looking at there is funds that everybody else in Ontario has been eligible for. So these combined funds are not funds that we've looked at when governments have had a third, and a third, or 50-50 partnerships. And so my concern is that we group this together. I've had conversations with the CAO, with Mr. Lee, so that at the end of the day, we have a full design package. And if funding such as those programs come out, we can always phase it, because the plans, as Chris said to me, don't go stale dated. They're always good. They're not an issue that time will change. And so if we have the full plans done instead of the phase, I mean, I would have loved to have been in a position after this crisis is over when they might be launching some infrastructure money to have a plan handed in and get some of it approved. This may take another year. As a counselor, I really don't want to proceed on a basis without some partnering money, besides what's a given that we're all get. And to that end, I think it's a lot better to have the grand design, and if that ends up being, $18 million, I'd be glad to throw the 6 that we have at it and get the other 12. Now that's, people will say, a long shot, but that's exactly what the newspaper said and others said at the Vail Center, that there's no way we would get 7, 7, and 7. And that's what we're 7.5, and that's what we got. And so I never want to run out of options. And so the point being, and the amendment there says, let's do it that way. It doesn't preclude us from doing it in phases, but let's see what we're up against and see what we can do with this. It may take an extra year. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to, I guess, the CAO. Great idea. I really agree with Councillor Bruno on this. One thing I want to ask is that we're looking at the design underground, all the pipes and everything. We're not going to go and change everything that was decided above ground, though, are we? Is that on the table again, or is this?
So through your worship to Councillor Bodnar, that's a good question. You will see that one of the recommendations here is that the BIA be consulted. This is not consulted for a redesign. What Councillor Bruno is referring to, and he has had discussions with staff, including engineering staff, who obviously for obvious reasons, aren't here today. We have a need when grants come along for shovel-ready projects. The province and the federal government use that term shovel-ready. What we have is a design. What we need is a detailed design, which is the size of the pipes, the length of the pipes, how deep in the ground are the pipes, and so on. And we need that to be truly shovel-ready. However, we're past the stage of looking at benches and looking at parking stalls and looking at what type of tree will be at certain plantings. That's all in the design. And staff's recommendation is that the design move forward to the detailed stage, but that the BIA is consulted in that.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried unanimously. Oh, sorry.
That's what I referred to. Yeah.
Yes,
Want me-
you should read that so we can add that. Sorry. I apologize,
problem.
Counselor.
No problem. I'd like to amend the current motion to report 2043 downtown CIP funding strategy as a friendly amendment, that staff be directed to prepare a request for proposal to retain a consultant to complete the detailed design for all phases of the project and contract administration of the project in accordance with the city's procurement policies to be completed in the summer of 2020.
Is that all right? That is a friendly amendment, Council? That's fine with you guys? Okay. Seeing that now, all in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Counselor. Item 5, Counselor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Corporate Services Department Finance Division Report 2020-48, subject proposed 2020 water and wastewater rates. So I've had, sorry, paper, that's right.
Can I get a second?
Must be the
please?
location.
Counselor Demaray, thank you. Go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you, Worship. With respect to this report, I, and I know others, have complimented staff on having very good base plans as to go forward. Witness our capital program that was introduced in previous council and how we grow it and the projects and things move up. We've done that with the experiment on the rationale behind the grass cutting. We've done that with the stormwater issue last year. I can't say I can speak that way about this report. I've asked for some reports, and Peter and Darlene on Friday on vacation, and given what we're all going through, have put together, and with the assistance of the CAO, some of that information. But frankly, it's not having the scrutiny of time, but there is an urgency here because the bills have come in from the region. I want to see things like not just what the extraneous flows are on the wastewater side, or what in a chart what we've saved in unaccounted for water. I was hoping to see, you know, that dollar amount highlighted and the good work that's been done, but we don't have the luxury of that tonight. What I'm very concerned about is being on a council that potentially doesn't build a new kilometer of water pipe. And in order to do that in this term, we need a plan like we have in all these other areas. I'd like to know what is the savings and did that go into a reserve? Is there a reserve and what's in it? Same thing on the wastewater side. In order to go forward, we need to know what we can afford. Should we be debenturing it? You know, we're going to come out of this in potentially already a 2.5% borrowing rate for infrastructure programs. That's a golden opportunity to catch up on this big backlog that every municipality has. And so in talking to the director, I can see passing this evening because it does cover the bills we have and the bills we're going to incur. It doesn't cover tomorrow. It doesn't show reserves. Quite frankly, it comes up short. Mr. Sinez has been kind enough on Friday and to spend some time with me on the phone. But all of this has been done in a rather repetitive fashion. You know, I would like to see the report from last year be able to be compared to the report from this year. It doesn't do that kind of stuff. In the interest of time, I'm okay with passing this because frankly, a plan may have even made this dollar amount go up. Passing it allows us those savings that we found this year, that our staff has found, is going to be already embedded in next year's revenue and expenses. So if we've saved $500,000 this year, that $500,000 is the starting point from next year. So is the savings on the water side. To that end, a slight amendment that's not written down. In order to do that plan, let's face it, whether it's water or this operating budget, when we pass this, we'll be getting right back into 221, because the plan has always been to have these budgets done before December 31st. So in short order, I've asked the director if he would assure us that before doing this again, we have a plan going forward, a look at our reserves, a look at, you know, is there any, because there are no drawn projects on the books. There's no design for the next street. So if the infrastructure program comes on, we can't hand in a street design because there isn't. And that could be an issue of not enough time, not enough resources, of doing it in-house versus not in-house. I'd like to see that all in a cogent plan, so how we're not jerking from one year to the other. And we've done it everywhere else in the municipality, like the capital plan. I'd just like to see it done here. So the only addition that I would like to see is that the director has asked for $500,000 on the wastewater side. Obviously, it's needed because that's the new problem area, and we're throwing money at cleaning clean water, relatively clean water from storm sewers. But I would like to give him the option that if he needs to spend money on the water side, he can. So I would be supportive of these rates this evening if we could just have on the, I have to find it here. Actually, I didn't look it up ahead of time. But I believe, Peter, you may know where it is, or maybe it's not actually in the, it is in the recommendation? It's, oh, the 500,000. Right now it currently reads that a wastewater detection program be implemented and funded $500,000 from the capital infrastructure reserve with results reported to council. I would like it to read, and this is with discussions with him, that that wastewater detection program or water programs be implemented and funded $500,000 from the capital infrastructure reserve at the discretion of the director. So in other words, he can keep it all in the way it is, but he has the option to maybe spend $100,000 to get all this plan in effect and the $400,000 on the reserve. But I'll leave that to the experts on how that should be done. But I'd like to give him the option.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconder to that amendment? Councillor Demeray? So we have a motion that has an amendment. So before I get to that, Councillor, Scott, do you have any information with regards to some of the figures that Councillor Bruno was talking about?
Sure. So through your worship to Councillor, well, to all of council, I don't have the figures that Councillor Bruno was referring to in cash dollars. I do have it in cubic meters for 2019. I think staff at the engineering center are, and I'm proud of them, but they're proud that they have heard messages from previous councils loud and clear, from this council loud and clear since the election, from the public, and water losses are unbilled, unaccounted for water, I should say, because we have unbilled, which can't be recovered because of where it goes. Yep. We have unaccounted for, which is leakage in the system. We don't know where it went. It was at about 1.4 million cubic meters in 2017. It is today, 18. In 2019, at the year end, it was 400,000. We're down to less than a third of what it once was. Now, in terms of savings in cash, there was an anomaly last year in 2019, so we had zero losses for water main breaks, but of course we had that major water main break, which we lost water, and we had to flush the system to ensure the safety of the water. So that was almost 500,000 cubic meters of water. So while we saved, we found our water, then we had some unbilled water that had to go into fixing the problem. And I'm sure that staff intends to continue trying to look for the savings wherever they can and then direct their attention to wastewater. But having the flexibility of using the funds for any kind of infiltration or losses is, I think, something that'll be right up staff's alley. This is something we intend to promote. We intend to let the community know this. I just have the sneak preview, but we are going to get this out through it well. And we have something a little bit more important to communicate with our community about right now. But once we get a lull, we'll get the word out, because this is, I think, a good news message from last year's actual results.
Also, Scott, with regards to the averaging, we won't see this until 2021 when the new averaging comes into play, correct?
Right. Through your worship, to your worship.
Yeah.
That's right, your worship.
Yeah.
We of course get billed from the region on a 3-year rolling average. So the region sells us the water in bulk from their treatment plant, and we distribute it through our Port Colborne distribution system. But it will take several years for the results to actually hit the books to the point where we're realizing the true actual value of the water savings. In fact, I can tell you, in terms of a number, now not all of this is found water. Sometimes it's conservation or just demand on the system. In 2017, 3.2 million. 2018, 3.2 million cubic meters sold to us by the region. In 2019, 2.6 million. So that's about 600,000 less. We can't take credit that all of it is saved lost water, but it shows that we're billing less, and that when the 3 years turns over, we'll presumably be at 3 years of less demand.
Okay. Okay, good. So we have a mover and a seconder for the amendment, so we'll deal with that first, and then we'll do it as a main motion. So any questions on the amendment? All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Now the motion is amended. Any further questions? All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 6, Councillor Wells.
(2020) operating capital budget.
Thank you. A seconder for that. Short and sweet. Thanks, Harry. Councillor Bagu. Peter, you're up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick overview of the operating capital budget, as council has had the package and has been able to review it. I guess in what I'm going to do for the time that we do have this evening. I know this. Hang on. Let me get this show on the road here. So with regard to the general budget, we've provided council with the base operating budget as a status quo budget, and that status quo budget basically keeps the same level of services for 2020 as it were in 2019, with a cost of living increase. Included also in the budget, and that gives us, and I'll get to the percentages in a minute. Also, our base budget includes a capital levy increase. As you know, council has always increased at a roughly 1.5% increase to the capital levy each year for the infrastructure deficit that every municipality in the province has. So that has also been included in this budget. I will show council basically what the blended tax increase, which includes the city, the region, and the education. And also bring to council's attention that what you do have in your package is a budget request, all the budget requests from council, which are basically 100% funded from the Ontario Municipal Partnership Funds and from reserves, and therefore it has no change or no addition to the levy. And also the capital budget itself the capital requests from staff are 100% funded through the capital levy and also through grants and reserves. So there's no change in the tax levy. What I will bring to council's attention is that our base levy increase is about 3.8%. which includes a loss of revenues of about 1%, but our base budget came in at 2.7%. Last year's 2019 levy increase was 4.64%, so we're actually below 2019's levy increase. The base levy is, like I said, 3.8%. The capital budget increase is about 1.4%, which brings us to a proposed levy of about 5.24%, which is again less than 2019, which is 5.92%. But what that equates to, Mr. Mayor, is with regard to our base budget increase of 3.8%, the overall tax levy to the region, or to the an average ratepayer with the city, region, education is about 3.74%, or $119. The city's increase is 3.42%, or $56. When we add the capital levy increase of $260,000, the overall increase is 4.48%. So that is the average increase to the residential homeowner with this budget, a 4.48% increase, which is about $143 annually. And the city's portion of that increase is about $80. The funding that is 100% funded is about almost $1 million, $977,000, and it's funded through OMPF funding from the province and reserves and grants, as you can see. As far as capital goes, there's about $11.7 million worth of capital projects that's being proposed, and a lot of the funding from that is through our capital levy, which is an annual capital levy, reserve funds of $2.8 million, and the majority of it through a grant applications that have been put forward to the government in the Investing in Canada grant of $4.3 million, and the Valet Community Investment Fund of $1.2 million, and the FedDev Ontario grant of $200,000. So you can see a lot of that is based on us receiving the grant applications approval from the governments in order to do those projects. And those projects are within your budget packages. So, Mr. Mayor, that's in a nutshell. I know we've sort of downsized the presentation for council just due to the circumstances that we're in now. And but I think that staff have provided a budget that is a status quo budget.
Thank you, Peter. Any questions? Councilor Brown.
Go ahead.
Councilor Clayliff.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Smith. So when we're looking at this budget, so this is to be the final budget for the year. Now you're talking about projects and things. I guess I'm looking at what's going on right now, and I have grave concerns that we are not going to overspend this year. We have to be seen as being fiscally responsible. I think that we have a lot of hard work and hard time ahead of us. So if we present this budget now to our citizens, is this the budget for the year? Are we looking at this covering all of our costs? Do we have enough in reserves to cover any other things that we need to do in the meantime?
Peter?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Right now, this budget as being the status quo budget, as you know, in your budget package, there were a number of staff requests for additional items that would affect the tax levy itself. But with that said, and with the timing that we do have with regard to the circumstances that we're under, that's why staff are recommending to put those requests on hold for council to pass the status quo budget, so we have enough funds to move forward and operate in 2020 with the same level of services, with no increased level of services, but no reduced level of services. With regard to what is happening and potentially lost revenues, potentially some additional expenditures, yes, we do have funds in our reserves if that's the case, or staff will have to, through the CAO, will have to look at any types of services that we do have that could be possibly cut back on in order to cover those costs so that you're not going to run a deficit at the end of the year.
Councilor?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Could you go back, Peter, to slide 9? So, if I'm to understand this, that without 3.803 provides the 219 rate plus the cost of living or those increases. 1.434 is the...
Counselor Bruno, can you face the microphone, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. The 1.434 is the amount that we put in to grow that capital base that we're building. And I thought from the beginning it was a great idea, and it's the way to go. In this year that you're referring to, my concern is between the 3.8, which I'm on board for, and gets you guys, speaking for everybody, rolling, and doing the work that needs to be done. There are things in that, there are things like some of those hires that we talked about that I think are necessary and need debate. But I don't want to stall the wheels of this going forward. So what I would like to do is still electronically have that discussion. So at the capital budget level, we are actually better off than a lot of municipalities. We've been told that for a while. So I don't want to take a pause in growing that, but I do want to have the ability to get something done with the fulsomeness of an electronic debate on what I'll call is extra. And maybe that comes out of, I should have looked at this, Angie, and maybe that comes out of the 4.34. Let me use an example, Desaya. Let's say you decide you want to do some things that are on everybody's wish list. Maybe you're able to stay in the 5.237, but this becomes 1.3. I don't know what that would equate to. It might be one of those hires. Where I'm going with this is, I truly believe in it. We don't have these numbers tonight, and I haven't asked for them. And, I know there's others that have discussed this point ad hoc. And that is, are there things that we haven't even completed in 2019 that are still in that list? We're already in March. We're going to be doing a budget that this time around hopefully is done by the end of December. Anything that we forestall in that capital budget increase, which still includes a whole bunch of projects that can get done and still includes undone projects from 2019. We will be launching the 2021 capital level increase, presumably for January 1st. So we're going to have a running start on that. We're not going to be asking for a capital levy in February or March. We're going to be asking for it in November and December. So I don't think with what's not done, what might not be able to get done because of what we're going through today, that there's lots of money and lots of projects that can get done if the 1.43 gets lowered. How much it should lower is a matter of debate, because it's about what do you want in and not in. So my proposal or amendment was going to be that the 2020, and this is just capital levy increase in the amount of $260,000, be removed from the capital funding projects. Projects be reviewed by staff to defer projects amounting to $260,000, and such funds be allocated as discretionary funds to be determined by council at a later date. Now, I wasn't even needing to go as far as $260,000, because I don't think you wipe out this whole 1.43. But I do think if you reduce this down and we get the city off and running with the operating expense, we have the city off and running with 2019 uncompleted capital projects, which I don't have a list of or know how much money it is. You'll also get a jump on 220, even if we left that at 1% for now. It allows us in the next 2 or 3 months to debate this like we normally do. And I don't think we stop the city progress in the meantime. And if it does, I'd even go as much as saying I'm happy to have a cap at that number. I just think we owe it to ourselves, and with the fluctuating things that happen, we may make 2 or 3 U-turns, and I'm glad we'll have a little bit of space to do it. So that's what I'm coming from, but that's just one man's opinion, so I don't know if the council has any thoughts or questions. Yeah, that one, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I don't know if I should.
just to clarify, that the $260,000 you're talking about in your amendment is coming out of the 1.434%
Correct.
number?
Correct. That is.
Oh, so that 1.434 is with the 260 out of it already?
Is $660,000.
Oh, sorry. So you're wiping that capital levy increase right out?
Well, I'm willing to others. I'm not suggesting that it has to be wiped out, but I guess where we were going when I talked to the CAO and Peter about this was, if we're gonna debate new on the operating side, we need to have some wiggle room. And the wiggle room can be that capital, because that's embedded in this 4.237. So it doesn't have to be the whole 260, Mr. Mayor, is the bottom line.
Yep, Mr. CAO?
So through your worship to Councillor Bruno, and I think for everyone's, the short way of saying it is you want to approve the money, but you don't want to earmark it for capital. You want there to be some flexibility for council and staff moving forward. I can tell you, there is a scenario, it's hopefully not likely, where this is our last kick at the can with the budget. If through council meetings being canceled possibly and other, we need to have our tax rates, we need to have them in probably 4 or 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks if we're lucky, to get the final bills out in time. If this is the budget we go forward with, I want to assure council and Councillor Bruno, this money could be earmarked in a reserve, and then no matter how it gets unlocked, it would be a decision of council. So let's use this money for operating, decision of council. Let's use this money for capital, decision of council. And this might be, with the uncertainty ahead of us, the year to do that. What it is going to require, though, as you've alluded to, is us to go back and find out which, because that is attached in the current year to some, whether it's a reserve transfer, whether it's a capital project, we'll have to find out which one is not going to make the grade or which couple. But we can absolutely approve the 260 today and release the 260 by a decision of council at some later point in the year, which I think is what you want.
Right.
So in reality, instead of a capital budget increase, it goes to a capital budget reserve. Is really where you want it, so that it sits there, comes back to this chamber for staff to bring forward those projects.
Yes, with one little, if I could.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My only concern was that I would like to see at some point what still hasn't been completed in 2 of this 219 list. And the 220, I mean, feel free to prioritize if there's 10. We really know with 8 months left, we can only do 8. And in that regard, if we're gonna be back here in November or December doing 220, I think there's room to do some other things that's in here along the way.
For 221.
Because I don't think you can get it all done anyways, let alone what you haven't done. Thank you.
Yes.
So, perfect. Through your worship to Councillor Bruno, I think I have a good understanding of your expectation. I do want council to know that there are unfinished projects from prior years. Sometimes there's a number of reasons. It could be, for example, windows in this building. We've put some money for year 1, some money for year 2, some money for year 3. For economy of scale, we might award all 3 in 1 year, but fund it over 3 years. The other reason is sometimes we issue, I don't know, just to use a random number, 10 RFPs, but the workload is such that there's only 8 done per year, so 2 are held over to the next year. A third reason could be that a project started but didn't finish in the year, so it's actually wrapping around into 2 fiscal years. But this is a long way of telling you, our new accounting system, and it's only a year and a half old at this point, has a project tracking software module where each capital project can be set up, and I can pull some reports from that. So that came later than the full accounting system. When that system is up and running, I'll be able to tell council the status of all capital projects that have been approved and are in the hopper. And I think that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, so during this year, you can get that out to us, as a side from this. So, Counselor, just to be a little clearer on that, so as opposed to calling it the capital budget increase, can we use, as the CAO said, a capital reserve?
Sure.
Just so that we know it is a reserve and it'll be brought back to this floor as we move forward.
I would even name it the 220 reserve, because that's where it's.
Identified by year.
Yeah, okay. Is everybody clear on the amendment? Counselor, you're clear on that? You have a question?
So, well, a statement, I think we need to keep our money fluid, it's like our own money, we don't want to lock it into something long-term right now. If not knowing what's going to happen with the economy and everything, we might want to have options. This gives us options. I think it's a good request.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Any other questions then? On the amendment? On the capital budget increase number which is, we've changed to the reserve? So everybody's clear on that? Counselor?
Just, actually not to the amendment, but just to Councillor Bodner's point, which is great, and Councillor Califf's concern. Can we keep our either lost revenues or extra expenses going forward in an account? So we know, basically what I don't want to do is start 221 in the ditch. Where you're starting with the budget and said, well, here's what you lost last year, and here's all this extra it costs, when we could backfill this and get on the road to the new world.
Okay,
COVID-19 expenses?
Yes.
Yeah.
could be any of that, yeah. Counselor? No, okay. So on the amendment, with regards to the 260,000, which is 1.43%, renaming it the capital reserve, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Now, to the main motion, that we're taking this budget with that one amendment. Any questions on that? Counselor?
I just have a comment. Just a comment, Mr. Mayor, thank you. One thing about this budget, I'm not too happy about how late it comes in the year. It's a lot of reading, a lot of questions being asked. I've sent out emails, I haven't got even got the answers yet from staff. And by giving us last Friday to today to make a decision, I'm glad Councillor Bruno did this. But I also want to mention that I did notice in 2019, some departments did go over budget. And hopefully the CAO can keep a good eye on it this year and make sure people are, responsible for their budgets. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. There are no proclamations this evening. There are no minutes of boards, commissions, or committees. Madam Clerk, consideration of bylaws.
There are 9 bylaws this evening, 6766-16-20 to 6774-24-20.
Mover and a seconder for the bylaws. Councillor Danch, Councillor Bodner. Questions to any of the bylaws? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. No further questions or comments. This meeting is adjourned.